What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Absolute Batman. Now, for those of you guys who are joining us for the very first time, as always, there will be a playlist at the end of the video that will help you get caught up on the last two videos that we've done because we're on issue number 3. And at the end of the last video, we essentially had Batman and Alfred Pennyworth momentarily working together because remember, in the Absolute universe, totally different from the main DC universe, Alfred Pennyworth is actually a mercenary as opposed to like the kindly butler that takes care of Batman. And Alfred Pennyworth was introduced to this just gigantic bulldozer, dump truck, whatever. People in the comments in the last video were just like, nope, actually, it's a dump truck. Who cares? So like there's this giant thing, this gigantic vehicle that they're all riding in order to like get away from the cops as well as the party animals, because the party animals are kind of like the main bad guys here, so to speak. And we're actually going to learn a lot more about them over the course of this, which is going to be one of the coolest elements. But we're actually going to find out that Batman is in way over his head. And in fact, he's going to have to make this really shady deal. But once they essentially escape, right, and bust out, that Alfred Pennyworth makes this pitch to Batman. And it's really, really cool the way that he talks to me, because what he says is Black Mask, who's basically the leader of the party animals at this point, he offered you a deal. That means that he's ready to compromise because people don't offer deals when they're not ready to compromise. And he says, my guess is whatever he's been trying to achieve with these attacks in Gotham, it's almost done. And he says, I'm saying that you should meet him, agree to step down your fight, and I'll bet he'll lower the attacks on Gotham to almost nothing, maybe even stop them. You get to be the hero. And initially Batman rejects this because in his mind, it's effectively quitting. But then Alfred kind of goes to explain the bigger idea that he has here, which is really a stroke of genius, but it is morally questionable on behalf of Batman. And he says, you would effectively save Gotham by saving lives through diplomacy, by being a grown-up. And if that's not enough, Black Mask serves some of the richest global plutocrats. This offer, it's probably for $100 million or more. So you take it and you can set Batman up as something real, something with impact. Now, here's the big thing about Absolute Batman in DC Comics. He's very reminiscent of Flashpoint Batman in the sense that while Absolute Batman has a few more resources at his disposal, it's very much a kind of bootstrap operation, right? I mean, it's not the grandiose, huge bat cave when, Bruce Wayne having billions of dollars to spend on all the stuff that he needs for gadgets and everything, right? It really is just Bruce Wayne flying by the seat of his pants. It's true vigilantism in every sense of the word. And so where Batman asks the question, what's in this for you? Alfred says, for Sionis to make the deal, he'll need to make transactions that will likely give my people all that they need on him. So me, I get to leave this city and you get to build Batman into something big. And that's where Bruce asks, so like Sionis just gets away with all of this? And the response of Alfred is, no, right? We'll use the intel that we have to bring him down. I can't promise that it'll be today or tomorrow or the day after, but we will be building a case and we will get him eventually. And so at the end of the day, it's just kind of one of these questions of, is Batman willing to momentarily step down his war against the party animals in Gotham, knowing party animals are going after political leaders, knowing that the party animals are sowing chaos and slowly sending Gotham down this descent into madness, if what he gains later on is a greater accomplishment than what he has now, right? Do the means justify the ends? And so at the end of this whole conversation, Alfred's just kind of like, okay, like we make a pretty decent team, find us some way out of here and we'll keep it going. And Batman just says the lever in front of you. When Alfred pulls it, he's ejected from the vehicle and Batman just goes down into the water and takes off back to what's essentially the Batcave. So in essence, it seems like he's rejecting Alfred's offer, right? And just kind of like, no, that's never going to happen. And morally, it makes sense. Right? From a moral perspective, Batman's not the guy to abandon his war on crime, even for a moment, and even if it means that at some future point in time, the city could be better off. Now, you could argue that that's dogmatic. You could argue that it's short-sighted. However it is that you want to look at it, it's the stance that he takes. But at the end of this, there's this kind of huge revelation That's pretty phenomenal. And so what you end up doing here is you kind of jump back to Batman's past. Now, again, one of the things that Snyder's done up to this point with 3 issues is that he's just kind of like intermittently thrown these small little moments in with regards to the zoo shooting that took place at Gotham. And for those of you guys who didn't see the first video that we did, instead of Bruce Wayne's parents being killed in Crime Alley, as you're traditionally used to, that his father was killed in Gotham Zoo trying to protect Bruce and the class because his father was a school teacher. His mother's still alive, and his mother is a social worker. Of course, she'll have a little bit of a bigger role in this story, but a lot of the traditional villains that you know for Batman, Killer Croc, the Riddler, people like that, they were actually friends when they were younger. And that's where Batman picks up with Selena Kyle here. And the story of Selena is not overly detailed, but what details we get are super tragic, because one of the things you find out is that she had left her most recent foster home. In fact, this is her 4th home. And the question's asked by Bruce, like, what, why did you leave? Like, what happened? And initially she doesn't answer. And he's like, I mean, but it's important though, right? Because you're my friend, you matter to me, that kind of thing. And she's like, some people like the idea of a foster kid, but that's not the real thing. That's in a good case. This was a bad case. And so literally Bruce is just kind of like, I mean, what is that, like 3 homes in the last year? And she's like, 4, And so ultimately Bruce kind of makes this offer, right? He's like, I mean, come stay with us, right? Like, I mean, my mom loves you, right? You could just kind of crash here for a little while, stay with our family. And Selena shoots it down. Now, here's the thing to understand, and I'm really kind of pulling this more from Nick Dragotta's art than anything else in the context. But in reality here, when you talk about people that have past traumas in that way, past struggles in that way, when something great comes their direction, they oftentimes reject it. And they don't reject it because they're mentally ill or anything like that. It's fear. Right? Fear is the most powerful emotion that exists in the world, because people do terrible things out of fear and people can do great things out of fear. But it is an incredibly powerful motivator when it comes to people doing the things they do. And for someone like Selena in this situation, where time after time, being in a foster home, being rejected from that foster home, likely being abused in that foster home in some capacity, the offer given to her by Bruce, well, come stay with us, it feels too good to be true. And because it seems too good to be true, I just suddenly just be thrust into this impossible circumstance where everything she could ever need to worry about is suddenly gone. She rejects it because there's no way that can be a reality. Her historical reality denies that. It defies that, right? And so we as people are creatures of habit. We trust the past more than we trust the future. And so ultimately it's just kind of like, okay, right? She just kind of like sidesteps the whole thing. And it's like, let's go talk about something happy, right? Let's go do something. And Bruce kind of figures out that she's been leading him to a particular location. And ultimately they end up in a movie theater, right? And like they start playing Zorro. Now at that point, you switch back over to the present day with Edward Nygma, right? The Riddler. Again, a childhood friend of Bruce. They've been friends ever since. And what Nygma's done here is he's essentially built a robot of sorts, kind of an information database. Now, the cool thing about this, and depending on how it is that Scott Snyder chooses to handle this, this could be the early framework for Brainiac. It's very reminiscent of Brainiac, but seemingly Brainiac is a character that may or may not already exist, because we've kind of seen glimpses of him in the Absolute Superman comics. And we don't really know the chronology of which comic takes place at what point in time. So we don't know if Absolute Batman predates Absolute Superman, if they're happening concurrently. We don't know where Wonder Woman fits in. It's all kind of a, I wouldn't say mess, but a mystery at this point, which I'm kind of digging. And so seemingly when Nygma is talking to Bruce about all of this, Bruce tells him, like, I came to talk to you, but Nygma's like, he is me and you and everyone. He contains about 4/5 of all human knowledge and counting. So ask him questions. And literally Batman's just kind of like, I mean, does he have a name? And that's where Nygma's like, I mean, I was thinking Al after Alan Turing, the Library of Alexandria, and as a visual play on AI. But now I'm just thinking something with riddles. Riddle Man, because the great riddle of humanity is how to live forever. And we all exist inside this dude. But nonetheless, ask your questions. And so what ends up happening is Batman asks him, how do the helmets of the party animals work? Now, that's one of the caveats of the party animals in Gotham, this organization where no one seems to know the identity of the people who were involved, that they all wear these helmets, that no one really knows how the helmets themselves work, but it seems to create a kind of information database that all the members of the party animals use. It's how they're so incredibly organized and structured. It's how they pull off their campaigns with seemingly the greatest of ease, either that or incredibly high level planning or a combination of all of the above. And that's where the robot says the mask has three functions. One, it completely obfuscates the wearer's identity from all global or local deciphering means. Two, it creates a wallet for the wearer connected to a highly protected private network of cryptocurrency called the Black Coin. And three, as you know, it provides objectives and targets for the wearer with different valuations. And the question here is, what do you mean by valuations? And this robot says arson, robbery, murder, each has a different value in Blackcoin, but we're talking tens and hundreds of thousands. Members can get quite wealthy quite fast. Now, what we don't know here is how the hierarchy is determined, which is to say, only these individuals are allowed to commit high value crimes. These individuals here commit low value crimes. If it's based on seniority, right? So like the new guys, they commit robberies, right? The guys who have been established, they get the money because they get to commit the murders, like that kind of stuff. We don't know if it works or if it's like a volunteer system, right? If they're just like, yeah, I mean, we'll all do it. And the more people you have committed to an act, the more likely it is that act is to occur. And so Batman's question is like, how would somebody disrupt this network? And ultimately, he gets the answer he doesn't want to hear, right? The network is far too expansive for anyone to bring down. You could take out a local server, but the network is satellite based. There are deposits of these masks all over the world, hundreds, maybe thousands of members. So the only way to take it down is to take out that satellite itself. And where Bruce is like, I mean, there has to be a way to do this, but ultimately the robot's like, there's not. There is no single way to do this. And we're assuming it's a singular satellite, right? We're not assuming that there's dozens, if not potentially hundreds of these satellites out there, all organized and structured. So if you were to destroy one, that because of redundancies built into the software or what have you, all of them can just continue operating as normal. And so that's where Enigma's like, man, just destroy the mask and forget about it. But one of the things that I hope you guys are starting to notice about all this is seemingly the walls are closing in on Bruce. There's only so much that he can do here, and he's starting to figure that out. Because at that point, he gets a phone call from Harvey Dent. And he's like, I looked into what you asked me to look into, right? The ArkM fund, though it could get me fired for doing that. But he says, a lot of the funding comes from a company called JK Holdings, highly diversified subsidiaries across the globe. But one specialty is building secure facilities, private prisons. And not just ordinary ones either. These are black sites off the books that no one knows about. And these sites, they've got investments from biotech pharmacies, even genomic firms. Whatever's happening at these places, it is not good. So we're talking what is essentially individuals being locked up, likely biological experiments on people being given powers. And so I would go so far as to argue that somebody like Killer Croc will become Killer Croc because he'll be tossed in one of these prisons and experimented on. But there's also going to be another character that's going to be teased here that I'm really excited to see how they would appear in Absolute Batman, assuming they appear at all, because we don't definitively know. But what you end up doing here is switching over to the former Mayor Hill, because this is an election year in the city of Gotham. So former Mayor Hill is running for election, and then Jim Gordon is, I believe, running for re-election. I could have those two things switched, but effectively, they're running against each other. And so Hill meeting up with Commissioner Harvey Bullock, this is initially believed by Bullock to be basically Hill trying to get his endorsement, right? You know, with that nickel slick smile and the politicians' manipulations, right? And basically saying like, I need you to go out in front of the city of Gotham and tell them that like, I'm the guy they should vote for, right? That kind of thing. But ultimately Hill's like, actually, no, that's not really what this is. I mean, I wouldn't mind having your endorsement, but I want you to meet somebody. And so what happens is Hill brings Harvey into the ship itself, and Harvey comes face to face with Roman Sionis. Now, here's another really cool thing, and this isn't really the big character that I was talking about, but it is kind of a nice little throwback from Scott Snyder. So Sionis is actually kind of engaged in, I guess, a practice wrestling match of sorts with a guy named Bibbo Bibowski. Now, Bibowski back in the day was actually the biggest fan of Superman in DC Comics. At least he was post-crisis. I don't know if that's the case right now with like New 52 and DC Rebirth, but like it's a nice little throwback, right? It's a nice little bit of a thing there. I mean, it's not an overly huge deal, but Sionis is able to kind of like hold his own against this guy and clearly outmatch this guy. But the discussion is really, really cool, because what happens is Harvey's just kind of like, okay, like, what's the deal with all of this? And that's where Sionis is like, make yourself at home, right? And where the question's asked, like, what's with the mask? The response of Sionis is like, well, it's just for anonymity. I have a lot of enemies in my line of work. And he says, I'm a professional pacifist. And by pacifist, I mean I help bring peace to troubled areas around the world. Good places being taken advantage of by bad people. And your city, it could use some peace these days. Under your boss, Jim Gordon, some very bad people, they're tearing Gotham apart. And where Harvey takes offense to this and like initially goes to leave, the response of Black Mask is, no, I'm not disrespecting the memory of Jim Gordon, or Jim Gordon's not dead, but I'm not disrespecting the legacy of Gordon in his time as mayor. Jim Gordon's a good man. We can all agree on that. And you two were cops together. I get that. That's a very, very close bond. But the fact is, the party animals are degenerates, young, godless, believing in nothing. They're filth. And they're growing in number. Between them and this Batman, the city of Gotham is quite literally falling apart at the seams. You have to get things under control now, or it'll all fall apart fast. Hearts and minds, soft laws, you know what all that leads to. And that's where Harvey's just like, war. Right? Like it all leads to war. And that's where Sionis is like bingo, right? I've seen it happen in cities all over the world. I grew up in one. Now I hear you requested 4 RVs and 1 air. My people can get you 10 and plenty of choppers, all through state channels, all above board. So how about it? What do you say? And seemingly they strike a deal together. And so that's when you switch over to Bruce kind of learning this dark secret of Gotham and learning the reality of the world in which he lives, where essentially Alfred Pennyworth gives this narration that kind of provides the answers and the context to what Bruce is looking at. Because Alfred just kind of asks, like, are your eyes open yet, Bruce? Again, a kind of monologue here where he's not talking to Bruce directly, but he's like, are you starting to see the pieces? They call them arcs, these black sites, secret, unregulated prisons run in conjunction with other governments around the world. Arc A was the first, the prototype in Santa Prisca. Clearly Bane, or hopefully Bane, is going to become a part of the Absolute Batman mythos. And I'm excited to see what Absolute Bane would look like. I don't know. I have no idea what that would be like, but like I really want to see it, right? Arc B is in Russia, which seemingly indicates KG Beast. Arc C is in China. And where Bruce is kind of looking at this, he's just sort of like, what in the world? And that's where Alfred's like, wherever you are, I hope it's finally coming into focus. Arc M, the biggest yet, is planned for Gotham. Look at it, Bruce. Look at what you're up against and all that you could lose. And again, you kind of switch back to this moment when they were in the movie theater, right? When they were watching Zorro as kids. And initially Bruce wants to leave, but like all of his friends show up and they're like, no. We're watching this movie from beginning to end, right? And his mother's sitting all the way back in the theater, just kind of watching them all, hang out and socialize with each other. But it's designed to illustrate the closeness that Bruce has with everybody, right? With his friends that care so much about him, with his mother, who of course loves him. You switch over to this moment where he has a conversation with his mom after seemingly observing everything that he saw with Arc M. And in turn, like his mom's of course kind of like, okay, like, I mean, I'm glad you're here, but like there's a look of worry on your face, like what's going on? And you actually find out that she's stepping in as Jim Gordon's deputy mayor, which terrifies Bruce Wayne because of the fact that there are so many people that would be coming after her, right? Like the party animals will try to kill her if she doesn't step aside and allow the party animals to do their thing. And because Jim Gordon stands in the way of the party animals and they went after him, they're definitely gonna go after her. So Bruce is worried about that. But the stance of his mom is really kind of the Alfred Pennyworth type thing that you would expect, right? Where she's like, I mean, I could like not do this. And I could stay safe and I could leave the city and I could go somewhere else. But what kind of person would I be if I did? Right? It's not just about the city of Gotham. It's also about me, what I stand for, what I value. And what I value is truth and honesty and doing the right thing. I would be betraying those values if I didn't do any of those things. So sure, I know that I'm putting myself in the crosshairs, but in order to make something better, sometimes you're gonna have to put yourself in the crosshairs, right? Nothing ever comes easy in this world if it's worth it. And so ultimately, Bruce is kind of like, okay, like there's nothing I can do to convince her that this is a bad idea. So that's when you switch back to Alfred, right? And Alfred says you cannot protect them, Bruce. It doesn't matter how brave you are or how skilled you are or even how right you are. There's only one thing you can do to keep them safe, and that's accept the reality of the world that you are in. Look around past your fist at all the people who get hurt. Look up past the towers, the satellites, at the forces at work, a whole sky tilted against you, and then look down past your feet and at how far you could fall and do the only good thing that you can. And so that's when you switch over to a kind of televised program where Hill running for mayor is just kind of like, Gordon's vision has failed the city of Gotham, right? And it's failed you as a citizen of Gotham. Like, I have the endorsement of Commissioner Harvey Bullock and the Gotham City Police Department. It's time for us to take Gotham back together. Now, this is where you start to realize how shady he is, because the shooting at Gotham City Zoo, right, in the same way that the deaths of Thomas and Martha in the main DC universe were like this kind of huge event, right? Like, oh my God, like ultra wealthy people were killed. That's a massive thing, right? As opposed to the any number of just regular Joes who die every day, that it receives special attention. Because as the Joker said in The Dark Knight, it's not supposed to happen that way. And so there's this kind of vigil that happens every year, right? Where they basically have this kind of memorial light that gets turned on to commemorate and remind everybody of the fact that it happened. And it kind of brings everybody together, if only momentarily, right? What Hill says is tomorrow marks the anniversary of one of the most violent days in city history, the Gotham Zoo shooting. I propose that this year, for the first time since that tragedy, we do not turn on the memorial light. It would be a mockery to see it bright in the sky with blood running in our streets. And while he's talking, you have like these reporters, right? And they're like, and amidst all of this, people are wondering, where's Batman? How will he respond? Now, this is a very particularly, I wouldn't say intriguing, but political move by Hill in this campaign. The reason being because that light represents unification. It represents a terrible thing happened to our city. And we are remembering that that thing happened because as long as we remember it, we can do what we can to make sure that it never happens again. But once you stop remembering a thing, it fades into the background, right? In political speak, people's memory is only ever one election long. And so in this instance, people don't remember what happened way back when enough time passes and the beacon stops being lit. And so it's just kind of a way for Hill to kind of remove that unification that the citizens of Gotham would have. And as Napoleon Bonaparte learned and taught the entirety of human history, a divided country is an easily conquerable country. And so in this instance, a divided Gotham is an easy to conquer Gotham. Now, I imagine Mayor Hill, or potentially Mayor Hill, is putting himself in a position where he hopes that he can capitalize on this and become a kind of like ruler of Gotham. I could imagine, like most any politician, he's a means to an end. And when the campaign of the party animal succeeds, if it does, they're gonna clip this guy, right? Like he's gonna sleep with the fishes. Be curtains for Hill, which I couldn't be sad about the fact that it would happen. And so ultimately you have Batman communicating with Sionis using one of his masks. Now, of course, he's not showing his face, but Sionis is like, that's right, man, $200 million to stand down as Batman for 1 week. And I'll make sure we go a little bit easier on Gotham City than we normally would. Now, I can't see you, but I hope you're smiling just thinking about it, thinking about all the good that Batman can do with that kind of money. The cars, the weapons, the tech. He'll be something larger than life, something epic. And where Sionis keeps talking, Bruce Wayne just simply says, enough, I'll take the deal. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. I told you the ending was nuts. But if you guys need to get caught up, make sure you click this video playlist. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.